Good morning and welcome back to the Done Deal Show, joined by Dean Jones. Morning, mate. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Thanks. Yeah, I've just about recovered from Sunday night. I was at Wembley. It was an amazing day, but obviously not the ending we were looking for. The biggest challenge of all was getting home from Wembley after penalties. Like that is a challenge in itself. I get what the hardest things you went through in life. I'd say getting home after the Euro 2020
Yeah,
final.
getting out of Wembley is actually one of the worst stadium experiences of your life.
It genuinely is.
It's hot because it's basically all just one direction. There's no other.
One direction. There's not enough trains. There's too many people, and they shouldn't be allowed evening kickoffs. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, pretty much. I totally agree. Lots going on now in the transfer market. The league, sometimes strangely, it's 3 and a bit weeks away from starting, so a lot of clubs trying to get business done. One of the biggest deals on everybody's lips at the moment is, of course, Raphaël Varane to Manchester United. Yesterday evening, the reports coming out of Spain seem to be very thick and very fast. Some of the journalists I've never heard of, but you start clicking on their profiles and you're talking, some of them sort of 300,000 or 400,000 followers. They work for publications that are very popular in Spain and sort of reporting on the Madrid news. A lot of the reports last night were suggesting that he will join Manchester United, that an official bid will be coming in the coming days. What's your current sort of understanding and take on Raphaël Varane to Manchester United, Dean?
I mean, it is interesting that they've all come out with this at the same time, because you'd imagine that they've had a briefing in Madrid if that's the case. It's always been a slowly situation for United, and they've just kind of stepped carefully because they would never... Well, at the start, they weren't convinced, and then I think last time I was on here, they just started to become more convinced that, okay, I think he is actually, one, open to leaving Madrid, and two, actually genuinely is open to joining United. But they've also they don't want to be seen, and still don't, as Varane rejecting them, because, you know, he's only been a target since intermediaries told Man United that he could be available. So it's the only reason he's even come onto their radar, because they were told that this could be a case. And if you're told Varane might want to join you, you have to pursue that, because he is better than the other targets that you were looking at in the first place. So United don't want to suddenly be seen to getting knocked back by someone that they didn't think they were signing in the first place. But they are definitely becoming more optimistic with every week, and every story seems to be going their way. I've seen it reported that his personal terms are not a problem. I mean, in some ways that is true, but in other ways it's not, because they have to still be careful on the personal terms of what they're offering here, because they know that anything that's in advance of 300 grand a week here is going to have a knock-on effect to Pogba, to Fernandes, to anybody that might be joining. And so that is a situation that they're having to tread carefully with as well. It's not that they can't give Varane what he wants. It's just that, you know, Fernandes is already their best player. So was going to want to be considered to be one of their highest paid players. Pogba, I think he is their most expensive outfield player, but will want to go further and further if he does sign his new contract. And you got De Gea, obviously, just lapping it up financially. But that is what it is. So they do have to be a bit careful there. Varane obviously is worthy of that kind of money, because he's one of the best centre-backs in the world. But yeah, I think United fans can start to get a bit excited.
I agree. It's just starting to have that feel. I mean, there was a number of Madrid kind of social media aggregators last night sharing the news, and they're quite picky with whose news they share. They kind of have a tiering system around, you know, in terms of... I don't think anyone in England, barring listening to them, has any understanding of who the most credible in especially in the local vicinity are. But they kind of share that, and a lot of the sort of trusted Madrid outlets are all reporting this. Unless it's the biggest sort of PR swing for them to suddenly like get a U-turn, but they're laying on thick he's going to leave. It just feels more and more like he's going to be a Man United player. Stutz here says, good day. He's Australian. Terry and Dean, hope you're both well. He's excited for the Varane transfer. Any chance that United can mess up given how much they've put into it?
I don't think they have put that much into it, to be honest. I think that's the whole point of this, that they've made sure that this hasn't been like, it's not like a Jadon Sancho type one-dimensional pursuit of one player, which everything is going into, and all their energy and all their funds are going into it. That's not the case with Varane. So, and that's what I'm talking about when I say they're treading carefully and they don't want to be seen to be rejected. That's what I mean there. So if it can definitely still go wrong. Of course it can, because they could be told tomorrow that actually Varane's going to stay at Real Madrid, or somebody else has come in and he fancies that. These things are never fully in your control as a football club, but they've done what they can. They continue to do that, and optimism's growing. That's where we're at.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that I know there's still no official word. I mean, Madrid have said that they believe he's going to pick Man United based on the fact that he hasn't responded to their most recent offer and sort of the Ancelotti approach. I feel like what United need to do when it becomes official that he's turned down whatever their next deal is, it's a case of getting in a suitable bid and almost getting this closed out and boxed out quickly so that it doesn't give him the time to change his mind, or another club, as you say, to come in and get involved. Like what I have been a little bit shocked by so far, and maybe this is another encouraging sign for Man United, is there are not a number of teams at 40 to 50 million pound being the quoted price. He can pretty much walk into any team in Europe, but right now it's only Man United that are really vying for him. And my hope as a Man United fan is that that's because it's serious that he wants to be a Man United player as opposed to just leaving Real Madrid. So yeah, as you say, it's time to get excited, but I still think Man United fans always tread carefully because we've been burnt a lot before with these kind of deals, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, exactly that. I think they do have to be careful, but ultimately, like, where else can he go? He's not going to go to PSG. They've just signed Ramos. There's Liverpool and Chelsea where you think potentially Liverpool don't really need a centre-back at the moment, so that's that gone. Man City are going to look for a centre-back, but they can't do it yet, so I don't think they can really push ahead with that. Chelsea, I mean, I would always be worried about Chelsea because they're very good at this, and you never know. They are considering a centre-back, so that is one that I would have half an eye on if I was a United fan. But as it stands right now, they're in a good position, and I think that they know the terms that are needed around the deal. So like you say, you hope that they make that move as soon as they know. Well, they will, because they know what it's going to take for the club to sell, and they know what it will take for the player to have his terms met. So that's a good situation for them to be in.
Absolutely. In terms of other kind of deals surrounding Manchester United, a lot of questions always coming in from United fans. The CAMAVINGA situation seems to have drifted away from Man United, but very much as you kind of stated 3 weeks ago, that he prefers a move to either stay in PSG or to go Real Madrid. Is that the case as you understand it?
Yeah, and it was always going to be the case. I mean, when he's so young, and he's got to tread so carefully in terms of what his career path is going to be. And United knew straight away that it probably wasn't going to be that he would look to get into the Premier League at that stage, especially as, it's so risky. One, you look at Donny van de Beek and be like, well, he's gone in there and he hasn't got to look in. And now suddenly people are talking about him leaving, and he's a great player. Why am I going to be any different? How do I get into that first team? What's my position going to be? You have to consider his confidence, his form. He's still on the up. And as suspected, the player's just not sure he's ready for the Premier League yet. He's considering his options. I've always, as you say, I said at the start, PSG would be the most obvious place for him to go if that was to open up. It hasn't so far. And so he'll look to go to La Liga because it's a better fit for him. There's more chance of him succeeding at this stage of his career. United have told Ren that they'll pay the money for him. The players knows that they are keen. I just don't think that the people around him, or maybe even himself, think that this is the right time to go Man United, and I can understand that totally.
Yeah, I get that, and I think he needs to be. It's the age thing. I think the Renato Sanchez would be the kind of case in point I would draw to. Just moving to a more pressured team in a new country at a young age, different maybe style of system of football, culture, everything around you. It is just a big risk, and I'm not surprised by it at all. In terms of other positions, Kieran Trippier was a name that was linked a few weeks back, a very low bid winning that was rejected by Atletico Madrid. Kind of gone quiet on Man United's front, but in the last few days, a lot of noise from the Trippier camp around him wanting to return to the UK, wanting to challenge for honours in this country. What's the latest in terms of Man United's potential signing of Kieran Trippier? I
mean, that was always the case. The reason that United got into the Trippier deal was because they were made aware that he wanted to come back to England. They've been considering that position and what they might do. And the first time Trippier was reported, it did seem like a surprise. Like, well, hang on, how do they think they're going to get him out of Atletico? Why do they want him out of Atletico? It's because noises have been made that it might be possible. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been going down that route in the first place. And that's why the bid they made was reasonably low, is because they know that the player fancies coming back. And so they don't think they're going to have to meet the 30 million valuation. They're still not going to go as high as that, as far as I understand. But I can actually see this deal happening, to be honest. His family, United fans, I think he's going to ask the club to strongly consider his wishes to return to England now. And I don't, as far as I understand it, think that he'll be seen as irreplaceable. I think they'll have to get somebody else in before they let him go. So getting it done before the Premier League season starts is probably going to be tricky. But he's done well for them. He's fitted in perfectly. He's got the title he wanted. And now he wants to come back. And United seems like a good place for him. I think he's a great profile of player for United to be looking at right now. Brilliant option to have if you've got him and Wan-Bissaka either competing for right back or allowing United to play a different system. I think it would be a brilliant signing. I really do. And again, it plays into that bond that England have built over the summer. You've got enough figures in there that are starting to become part of that setup now. You've got Shaw and Maguire already there, and then you're bringing in Kieran Trippier, and you've got other guys in that squad that are part of it, and Rashford, and that's what you want, and that's what United are looking for. The risk of signing players like Camavinga is that they're coming in from separate and they've got to build all those bonds, and it takes such a long time. Like Van der Beek, he's got to find his way into the setup, and Trippier's going to fit in like a glove. He knows half the lads. Everybody knows what he's capable of. He's got the respect. So as long as they can find some sort of in between ground on a fee, then I think it'll be okay. As I say, I don't think it's going to happen overnight, though. United fans might have to be a bit patient on this. Not as patient as they were at Sancho, but maybe a month.
Yeah, I hear that. The Trippier one, just again, it's the fact that his team are like pushing for this move back. That always helps a buying club, because Atletico Madrid are not stupid. They know the player wants to come back to England. He isn't going to sign a new deal. They don't want to, he isn't getting any younger. His value is only going to decrease. So I think a happy medium could definitely be found in regards to that. In terms of, before we move on to talk about Chelsea and Liverpool and big conversations around Man City at the moment, a couple of new deals are being spoken about at Old Trafford: Paul Pogba and Bruno. What's your understanding about the approach to these by Manchester United right now?
Yeah, Bruno's a no-brainer, so they'll just move ahead with that and get it over the line. People just think these things are going to happen overnight, and they don't, because I think we've talked on here before about it's like how it's like buying a house when you're doing any sort of deal in football, and there's so many legalities that goes into it all. It doesn't really matter about how long it takes, as long as the player is happy with the terms that are being offered, then it'll go ahead. And United, there's no expectation that Bruno Fernandes is going to turn down a new contract or look to join another club, so it's not really a problem. Pogba, obviously, there's always noise about him wanting to go to Juve or Real Madrid. That's going to continue to be the case. I just think that the chances of him staying at United remain pretty high, to be honest.
Yeah. It kind of feels like that to me right now. I don't. Yeah, it just doesn't feel. You think about a lot of the other deals right now that you can see a move happening. I read something yesterday where it was almost Pogba was excited about the idea of playing for PSG, but then it said in the very next sentence, but he won't go against Manchester United. So essentially, and a good, I think that's actually a good message about Paul Pogba as well. That, you know what, it also shows he's fairly happy at Man United as well. If he was desperate to get out, hated it, didn't like the environment, when you feel like that about any company, you do what you can to get out. whether you're a footballer, whether it's a normal standard working class day job, if you're unhappy, you push to get out. But if it's like, you know what, I wouldn't mind playing for PSG, but if I stay here, I'm very happy. I think that's a good place for Man United to be in. And I also feel that the Raphaël Varane signing, you mentioned earlier about relationships with the likes of Trippier coming in. I think if Raphaël Varane lands, Sancho comes in, you add a bit of a Kieran Trippier into this mix as well. It's a lot easier for Pogba to feel relaxed about staying because he'll be able to see a brilliant team being built around him and being put together, you know. And
what an unbelievable team that would be. You know, you're looking at your back line of Shaw, Maguire, Varane, Trippier. You're looking forward in that team. Then I still think you need to start to fix the DM position, and they are. Like I saw, you know, people ask about United's strategy overall and whether it's changing, as obviously Woodward being phased out, John Murta and Darren Fletcher coming in. Like, yeah, things are changing. This club is changing. And the one thing that I think is positive is it's going to be more progressive than ever. Woodward wasn't quite as bad in every aspect of his job as everybody seems to think he is. And he did have a vision of where he wanted this club to go. And largely, it has actually headed that way. I know he's probably showed maybe too much loyalty to Solskjaer. I'd say perhaps that. But in terms of the way this team is building, they've just come second in the league and all the rest of it. It's not been too bad. If these guys now can take that next step and identify players that can fit in with the United philosophy and are happy to take their time to do that, then that's where they want to be right now. They've got Jadon Sancho over the line. That's that stress over. I think that's going to be the next focus for them. You know, Varane's a lovely surprise that they've come across. Who's that defensive midfielder that they can find next? And that'll be really interesting, I think, as this window opens up. Like, can they do it now? Or are they going to just say, okay, let's put our foot on the ball for a bit here. Let's see how we can get through. We've got a good squad still with the players that we've got. Maybe we look at that in January.
Absolutely. A great update there on Manchester United. Viewers, make sure you've hit that like button for us right now. 1,200 people watching live, which is amazing and humbling as always. But smash the like button. Share this stream on your social media platforms as well. Members, we're going to go to at 30 minutes in, we're going to go to member only and super chat only. So you can get your comments and questions directly into Dean. You can ask him with me, but why not utilize Dean Ways here? That makes a lot more sense as far as I'm concerned. I want to move on and talk. We're going to tackle Chelsea and Arsenal and Liverpool a little bit later, but I want to spend a little bit of time looking at Manchester City. Of course, hot on the tail of Jack Grealish and Harry Kane, and was hoping we could get a bit of an update about those two situations if possible.
Yeah, I mean, they can both become easier to kind of negotiate now, obviously, because the Euros is done. They're going to push forward with both and see how far they can actually get. Harry Kane is, I think, going to be the more difficult of the two to get done. It's Harry Kane still wants to go, as far as I understand, and Man City is his ideal destination, pretty much his only destination he wants to go to be honest. But that offer has to be there. He has to know that a good offer of 100 million plus is going to be on the table for Tottenham before he can really kick up more of a fuss again. He made really clear when his interview with Gary Neville that he feels that 100 million is fair price for him right now. Given his age, given his circumstances. He didn't say because of his injuries, but I think we all know that there's a chance that this guy gets injured again in the next year or so.
Yeah.
So once that offer's there, I think that he'll go to Tottenham again and say, come on, I want to go. Make this happen for me. Daniel Levy's going to say, no, I need you. I can't let you go. And Nuno's been told that Harry Kane will be a Tottenham player next season. There's going to be talks now about him, understanding the philosophy around Tottenham. So it's going to be extremely difficult to get it done. But Man City have to, first of all, give Tottenham a decision to make, because at the moment they haven't got one. There's no actual offer there for them to turn down. So let's get that in. Let's get Kane on the table, talking to Daniel Levy, talking to Paratici, telling them that he wants to go again. It's a tricky one because Kane actually gets 21 days off on the back of the Euro. That's how Tottenham work in terms of post-tournament players that have got to this stage. So that's 3 weeks. I mean, the season starts in 4 weeks, and the first game is against Man City. So that's not a lot of time to get this done and to figure this out. So I think it's fair to say that Kane's probably not going to be lining up against Tottenham on the opening day of the Premier League season.
Do you think that's a part of this? Do you almost feel that there could be, I don't know whether it's unwritten, unsaid, or a direct element where, I know Spurs are publicly the whole time going to say they're not going to be doing this. But do you think if tomorrow City was to bid £120 million, do you think there could be a bit of an arrangement? Are these things normal in football where they say, look, we'll do it, but we're just going to do it after we've played it? Like we'll finalize it after we've played each other because we just don't want to go up against them on the opening day of the season. Because for a Spurs fan, Harry Kane scores a hat-trick against you on the opening day of the season. That's just like insult to injury. Or do these things not really matter when these types of large transactions are taking place?
Yeah, transactions of this size, that doesn't really happen because Man City will be like, no, we are paying 100. I mean, we're making this up, but 120 million pound for this asset. We want to utilize it, and you are a good team that we need to beat. If we're paying you that money, we want to play him against you, and that's fair enough. When it's loan deals, when it's smaller fees, sometimes when it's the only way you can agree it, then yeah, it happens. Obviously, like that's a last case scenario for Man City. They're not going to openly go in there saying, "Oh, we promise we won't play him against you."
Yeah, and I asked that because again, it's fan theory, and obviously we speak to a lot of fans. Like, I don't think it will happen because of this, and then it will move on after that. And I'm sort of like, you sort of sit there and think, I don't know how logical that is at that size. Maybe if it's a loan deal, well, loan deals they can't play again. If it's a small deal, then maybe. But you see this quite a lot in January transfer windows. You'll often see a deal happen between two clubs, and then within a week or two, they play each other in the league or the FA Cup, and it always seems to happen like that. It's almost like it's been scripted in many ways.
Yeah.
I mean, the Harry Kane one's, as you say, it feels like the bid needs to come in before there's more of a fuss around. It's all gone very, very quiet. In terms of Jack Grealish, will City bid for him? And do you think Jack Grealish will push for the move as and when that bid comes in also?
I think so. I mean, the interesting thing here is like, okay, publicly you'll see like Aston Villa are very strong on the like, he's not for sale. We don't want to lose Jack Grealish. I'm told that that's not completely true. Behind the scenes, there is an open-mindedness to, if a ridiculous offer comes in here for Jack Grealish, if, for example, it is above the fee that Man United paid for Pogba when they set the British transfer record fee, then you have to consider that, and you have to consider that the player is obviously going to want to go at that point. You have to consider that you can go to the fans and say, we didn't want to lose this guy. We've just got £90 million, whatever it is, for him. This is where we're at. We will reinvest the money. You can see how ambitious we are. We promise that we'll continue to improve. And Villa fans would obviously be gutted to lose Jack Grealish. I think Jack Grealish, in a way, would be gutted to leave Aston Villa because it's a big part of who he is and how he's got to this point in his career. But ultimately, if you are a player of his ability, if you want to get to the pinnacle of where you can be, then you have to move on. And Jack Grealish has realised in the past 2 months just how highly people are thinking of him, just how much of an influence he can have in the biggest games and in the world, basically. And yeah, if Man City do put that money forward, then I think it would probably happen. The one thing that I guess limits the whole situation right now is that where does City sit in terms of FFP? What even are the rules around FFP? It's so confusing. I mean, the way that PSG are throwing wages at people right now, I'm presuming that FFP isn't really going to exist for the next year and that they've had confirmation of that because it's pretty crazy the kind of money that they've given the signings that have come in. And that's, as I've said before on here, given Man City and Chelsea belief that they might be able to do deals that normally wouldn't be possible. You couldn't normally dream of going and signing £200 million players, and City haven't normally even wanted to go near that. But they're at a time when they've seen what happened with Liverpool the year before. They didn't go and invest on the back of their success, and it fell apart because they started to pick up injuries and didn't have the depth that was needed. And City, not only have they lost Aguero, who's obviously been a big part of their success, but the squad is at a stage when it does need to evolve again, and they don't want to stand still. That's the big thing for Man City. They will refuse to stand still because they want to become the bar of English football, bar of European football. So if they can do both of those deals, and they will. In the meantime, they'll just pursue both, and they'll have to make decisions as and when they come to them.
Yeah, of course. It's the FFP thing is the stumbling block. I even think for Chelsea, we'll move on to Haaland soon. There is still that element of, if we do it, but we haven't interpreted these blurred lines well enough, it could leave us in trouble later on down the line. Which, but then, do you actually get in trouble for breaking FFP rules anyway? I mean, it's almost a law that says it's like jaywalking. No one gets in trouble for it. You know what I mean? But it's like, I don't know. Am I gonna get, it's just a weird one for me. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I think a lot of people feel that if City do sign Jackie Grealish and Harry Kane, it's the kind of general consensus among fans is, what's the point of any of us trying? And I suppose that's exactly why. I suppose that's exactly why City want to do it, because they want that to be true. They want to make it so that they just can't be caught and can't be touched. So maybe it is worth doing. And
in the past, they have stuttered and they haven't matched terms. They've had targets that, I don't know, look back to Alexis Sanchez when they were going to sign Alexis Sanchez, and he ended up going to United because United were the ones that put up the money. And at the time, look, they really wanted Alexis, and he was pretty much the top of their list, but they refused to go there. This time, I think they'll be more decisive, Man City. I think they set out early on that Grealish and Kane were priority signings, and if they are setting out with that, then they know the type of money it's going to take to get them. So you would imagine that they're willing to go there.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. And speaking of achievements, just want to announce while we're live on the terrace, we have just passed 200,000 subscribers while we've been live. So massive thank you to everyone that signed up. I can't believe that many people subscribe to my channel, to be honest. But thank you. Really do appreciate that massively to every single person that's subbed, new, old, and indifferent, all our members as well. So cheers.
Congratulations, mate. That's been a long build up to that 200k, hasn't it? You've been waiting to hit that mark. It just seems like you've just been just under it.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, the channel's been around since like 2013, but we didn't really take it seriously until the summer of sort of 2017. Summer of 2017, I think we were on like 8,000, 9,000 subs or something like that. And so it's really been sort of 3-4 years of work to kind of get to where we are. And it's just growing nicely and steadily. And what I love the most is we have this really good mix of fans from different clubs. So I can do a video on Tottenham, and 80% of the viewers of that are very different from the viewers of a Chelsea video, which is nice. We've got a really good mix of people from different clubs, which was always the aim. So yeah, very, very happy, and thank you to everyone that has signed up and subscribed and everything else. Another big move is I want to move into Chelsea, and we are going to touch on Haaland in a bit. I don't know if there's any direct updates. It's more of getting a take of the situation surrounding that. But Declan Rice, again, is a name that's linked with the move away, big money move away this summer. Chelsea leading the race on that. Well, how's that situation looking now that Euro 2020 has ended?
Again, it's like Grealish and Kane. I mean, something could actually happen now. It's interesting for all three of these players. I mean, Grealish, Kane and Rice are all in a situation whereby they want to better themselves and they don't want to stand still, and getting a taste of, how close England came to that success over the summer has just, from what I understand, just made it even more clear that they are interested in making moves. And you can understand why. You think of Declan Rice and the trajectory of his career over the past 2 years, to end up as, the main man in England's midfield, basically. Of course he's going to have his head turned. I spoke to somebody from Chelsea who was there when Declan Rice was a kid, and I said, what was it like when he was let go? Like, how's that looked at? And he said it was a really, really tough decision at the time. He was a young teenager. He was a big character, a big part of the team that had been building through the age groups, but they had to take a ruthless decision. And at that point, he just wasn't at the standard that some of the other lads in that Chelsea setup were. And you have to make decisions to release people, no matter how difficult it is. And that's where they were with Chelsea at that point. And it sounds like it was a really, really devastating decision, not just for Rice to take himself, but for people around that academy, people that had put in so much effort in trying to get Declan Rice to the standard that they wanted him to be. He was just not there at that point. So, at that stage as well, there weren't many clubs actually willing to take him either. A couple of other big clubs looked at Rice at the time and didn't take him, and he ends up going to West Ham. So Chelsea didn't necessarily get that wrong. But when Chelsea do get things wrong, it doesn't mean that they're never going to, go back to these people. And from what I'm told, Declan Rice doesn't hold any grudges. He's quite excited about the idea that Chelsea want him back. I think he'd go back there with a smile on his face saying, look, what are you doing, lads? Why didn't you trust me? Of course I was going to be fine. And that's just the kind of character. He's a massive character. He's such a nice lad. And Chelsea want that in their dressing room as well. Thomas Tuchel is an admirer of Declan Rice. Frank Lampard was a huge admirer. And when they changed managers, Declan Rice was kind of took a back seat because Thomas Tuchel didn't know loads about him. Obviously knew enough about who he was, but they were like, okay, we'll put this in the back burner for now. And it did sound like they probably wouldn't pursue it at all. But Rice has been so good that he is back on the agenda. And Chelsea really just need to now figure out what this is going to cost them. They're not going to make an opening bid of £80 million. Of course they're not. I think they'll probably look to fill things out at around 50, 60, just to let West Ham know that they're serious about this and to let Rice know they're serious about it. And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how likely a bid do you think there is going to, or an approach? Again, I actually get really confused nowadays because semantics have dominated the transfer market. So you sometimes say, when's a club going to make a bid? And it's like, well, clubs don't make bids. They make inquiries and then they make bids. So let's just keep it basic. What do you think Chelsea will make a bid for him or make one of those inquiries for him this summer? Is that something that's highly likely to happen in your opinion?
Yeah, let's call it a formal inquiry, shall we? Let's say that Chelsea are definitely going to go to West Ham and say, look, what's he going to take? They're going to do it because they want to know. Even if they don't decide to pursue it after that point, they need to get the ball rolling. They need to know how possible it is. And they know that the player wants to come. And I think that it's just been proven over the past month what an addition he would be to that team. And they have to start looking to evolve their midfield as well. They're not desperate to get Jorginho out the door like people seem to think they are. Like Jorginho has just won the Champions League and Euro 2020 back to back. He gets spoken about like he's a mug, but he's such a good player.
Eddie, if Chelsea want to give him some money, honestly, I love Man United to go 4-3-3. If you stick him as a single pivot in a 4-3-3 at Man United with Bruno and Pogba either side of him, it's game over. I don't think people do you know what it is with him? There's no excitement in his game. He doesn't crunch into tackles. He doesn't score screamers. And it's such a British mentality to go, well, that means he's not very good then. It's the subtlety to his game is beautiful.
Oh, the reading of his game. I mean, I was at a few of the England games this summer, and when you're overlooking, you forget actually, because we haven't been in football for so long, you forget what it's like to go into a stadium and watch a game differently and not on TV. And, Declan Rice, his positional play, his awareness, the control he has over other players, the link up that he built so quickly with Calvin Phillips as well. Like that's something else I was told that Chelsea are really impressed by in more recent weeks, is that he's shown how quickly he can fit in to a system and to play with other people. So while you thought at West Ham, okay, well, he's a star player in a good team, how would he fit into a great team, the European champions? He'd be fine. He'd be absolutely fine. So yeah, Chelsea are going to pursue this one.
There we go, Chelsea fans. We spoke about semantics. The Haaland deal is getting to a point now where I see most of the arguments on social media being semantic driven. What words are being used? Have we put a bid in? Have we made inquiries? personal terms agreed, personal terms. I had a debate yesterday evening with someone that said, Terry, you said that personal terms are agreed. I said, I don't really care about the breakdown of it. And so I said, no, they just wouldn't be a problem, but they're not actually agreed on. It's like, well, how can they not be a problem if they don't each know what they'd offer each other? It's just, you get what I mean? It's all just crazy around that. They mean exactly the same thing. I think it's just people trying to protect themselves, really. But Chelsea, a lot of the reports this week have been like, personal terms are not a problem. We'll use that phrase. People seem more comfortable with it. Personal terms are not a problem. Roman, I don't quite know what releasing the funds mean. They're just in a bank account. They're not going to be released until you send the wire transfer. Maybe they mean sanctioning. I think, again, it's interpretation. For me, that means sanctioning a bid of up to £150 million. There's talk this morning of Chelsea stopping negotiations for Tammy Abraham joining a West Ham or a Villa because they want to try and use him as a make weight in that £150 million bid. What's the latest as far as you understand it around Haaland to Chelsea? And do you expect there to be at least one official bid to really test the water this summer?
Yeah, I mean, there hasn't been any advance on this as far as I know at the moment. As I said before, the reason that Chelsea think that they can be successful with a bid is next summer there's a fixed transfer fee clause of 75 million euros for him to leave Dortmund. That's not a lot of money. That's really not a lot of money for someone like Erling Haaland. So Chelsea's thought is that, what if we offered double that now? And I spoke to you about it last week or the week before, and I said I spoke to people at Dortmund, and that's the only way they see them having their heads turned over this situation, because you're saying, okay, we can get double the amount of money for him right now than we would get in a year. That is much closer to what his actual valuation is. We're actually going to let him leave next summer for 75 million euros seems criminal in some ways. But then you've got to look at the whole setup as it is right now. And look, Haaland's advisors have been told that the club still have no intention at all to let him leave this summer. That's the stance where we're at right now. That remains the case. But like I said with Jack Grealish, there's always a figure. There's always a figure that changes these things. And we'll have to see whether Chelsea actually decide they can go and do it. They'll only go and make an offer like that, first of all, if they are absolutely convinced that Haaland wants to join them, because they're not going to waste their time here. They've been working really hard on that in the past few months in trying to make sure that everything is in place that would keep the player happy. They've even gone and become champions of Europe to make sure that he's happy with the status of the club. They've put in players around there that they think would fit around the focal point of the star number 9. And now they've got to find that star number 9. They haven't got long to do it. There's a gap there for them, and it has to be filled. And they want it to be Haaland more than anybody else. That's all I can say at this point. Abramovich is also a huge admirer of Lukaku. They'd be perfectly happy if Haaland wasn't to come to sign Lukaku. That's also going to be really difficult. I'm not saying that that's going to be straightforward, but that is on the back burner. That's been worked on in the background in case it can happen. And if you can't get Kane, if you can't get Lukaku, if you can't get any of these, tier 1 strikers that are spoken about all the time, then it does leave them in a little bit of a tricky situation, because I'm not sure what the next step down from that is and whether it's good enough for where they want to be, which again plays into the model of let's just go and make this offer to Dortmund and see if we can get him now, because in a year's time, the chances are Haaland might not want to join Chelsea. They might not be European champions. They might not be Premier League champions. It might be that Barcelona are in a situation where they can offer money again. It might be that Madrid have still got the door open for him to go in there. So many things can change. But right now, they can jump the queue. And that's the situation that they want to be in.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I think everything you said there is my understanding. And I know a lot of I've been saying to a few Chelsea fans recently behind the scenes sort of reached out that there isn't going to be new news every day. A lot of what you're going to hear is going to be confirmation. And I think everything you've said kind of marries up with sort of a number of different stories that are out there, but shows are kind of true. I look at this situation a bit like Saunaghez and Liverpool that we'll get onto in a bit in terms of their situation. I feel like it's actually in Chelsea's the ball's in their court right now. It's almost a case of, Dortmund's stance. That either personal terms are not going to be a problem, or or you've been told he would agree to your offer. I don't really care how people want to explain that anymore. It is what it is. All these things. You've either got the money or you don't. You have your understanding of FFP rules or you don't. It's a case of get the bid in and see what happens. And that's going to be the intriguing thing to me as to whether or not they actually make the bid, because that can change the world. That could change Haaland's stance. That can change, as we've already said, Dortmund's situation on things. And maybe even someone like Lukaku, who's sitting there, thinks, hang on a minute, though, he might start to push for a move a little bit. So it could just change a lot of things around the situation. So I'm intrigued to see as and when that comes. That'll be the next major update on this situation. Or the update will be Chelsea have decided to not make a formal bid. They're going to walk away and go elsewhere. It's that feels where it's at now. I don't feel like they can do any more work on this deal, if that makes sense. It is what it is. It's like they've done the work. They know how the land lies. It's Chelsea, get the bid in or don't. That's how it kind of feels at this point. In terms of clubs making bids, clubs pursuing certain deals, Liverpool Football Club have been linked to a number of midfielders in recent weeks. There was the Soundaguez links reported at the back end of last week that the clubs had, again, agreed on a fee or spoken about a fee that was acceptable to them both. That's how someone tried to word it yesterday. I was like, that means agreed then, mate. Like, just relax over the PR, bruv. It's crazy. But, of course, the stumbling block appeared to be the wages that he was going to be offered. However, there's links to the likes of Barella. There's links to Youri Tielemans. What's your current understanding about Liverpool's sort of Gini Wijnaldum replacement and who they're likely to get at this stage?
It's going to really come down to finances, and at the moment, it's very unclear whether they've got much money to spend, and I don't think they do have the type of money that you'd need to sign Barella, to be honest. I think that they are going to have to look at who else they can get out the door. Losing Wijnaldum, I always said from the start, was such a gamble, because I understand perhaps not wanting to give that player that contract, but to replace that player is going to cost you above and beyond that. And that's the situation that Liverpool are now going to find themselves in. It's as simple as that. I don't think Barella's going to join Liverpool. I don't think he's got any intention of doing that. He's been brilliant for the last year, and I don't personally think that that's one that's going to come through. I don't also think that Soundaguez is something that's going to happen. Tielemans isn't one that's going to happen. It's very difficult to get a grip on what Liverpool can do at the moment, because all I really hear when I try to get a path on what they want to do is hearing stuff they can't do. They can't go and spend in advance of £50 million on a player. They've still got a stacked squad and need to move on some players on the fringes. They need to evolve their front line, because they know that in a year's time, at least one of Salah and Mane is going to look to move on and push themselves into a new club, and they want to have the next gen ready to move that forward. They know that they need a centre midfielder. There's so much they need to do. I don't think any of it's going to happen soon. I really don't, because I think that the club need to figure out how they can get to where they need to be.
Yeah, we had a few Liverpool fans on last night, and one of the questions I kind of posed to them was, I can't imagine anything other than a close title challenge this season is going to appease Liverpool fans. The front line looked stale last year. I totally understand that the defensive issues they've had with Van Dijk being out. They've, of course, signed Konate, so that area should improve itself. Midfield, they've lost Gini, and it's a huge loss. He's been so instrumental in them. I get the feeling with Liverpool right now, and it's hard as a Man United fan to say this because people take it as me being salty as opposed to having a genuine football opinion, but I just feel like they're so slow out the traps at the moment that it's going to damage, maybe not damage their top four hopes, but I do feel like it's going to damage their title hopes, because there just hasn't been that injection of new player. And I know the Euros have been on that, it's made it a little harder, a little tougher to get things done. No one's at that point, but it's not just what Chelsea and City have done. It's, well, where are you right now as a football club? And I think there is this notion from Liverpool fans that, well, we only didn't win the league last year because of our injury problems. If we don't have those injury problems, we're going to be okay. I just don't think that's the case. I don't think Van Dijk returning suddenly makes them catch Man City overnight, because, as we said last year, it was more about their attack not working. It was more about the lack of chances. It was about the lack of conversion rate that was the issue. If Mo Salah and Mane are firing on all cylinders and scoring at the same rate they were 2-3 years ago, then maybe. But I just feel like there's this. I just get this sense of staleness around Liverpool right now, and they need to do something. But if there's no money, it's so hard in this market to go out there and buy players that are of a good enough standard to improve you.
Yeah, totally that. I think one of the things that's pretty clear with where Liverpool are right now is that they feel that they'll be better off negotiating with clubs outside of England, that's for sure. I mean, they've been linked with a few players that are in the Premier League already, Rice, Tielemans, and they're just out of reach, and they can't negotiate the type of money that they're going to have available to them. So that's something to keep in mind when, you know, anybody watching this, when you're reading about Liverpool's transfer targets and what is doable. I think anything outside of England is where you should be looking. And there's links like Florian Neuhaus, and he to me is somebody that I can imagine coming in because he's at a club that would sell. He's at a club where it wouldn't take the kind of money like Tielemans, somebody like that. It's going to be 60, 70 million pound. Rice is going to be 70 million pound. And if you start shopping in Bundesliga, if you start shopping in Holland, you're probably spending half that money. And that's, from what I understand, closer to where Liverpool are going to be right now. The problem that they've got overall is that they do want to improve the squad. They do have lists of players in various positions. At this moment in time, they just cannot be decisive over going ahead and making offers because they need to get players out. And it is what it is, you know. It's maybe they should have been more, I don't know, proactive in trying to get players out. Maybe they will be, you know, people like Harry Wilson, they are happy to leave. But ultimately, I think it's going to take a few weeks for this to clear up. And it might be again that we're waiting down into that last week of the transfer window for Liverpool to do something that really satisfies everybody and feels like they're ready for the season.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I mean, there was links, I know we briefly touched on it, to Barella. I just feels like an absolutely just a non-starter as far as I can tell.
Just won't happen, mate. It won't happen. Like it's too much money. He loves it. Inter Milan. Inter Milan don't want to sell it. There's literally, I don't see a single avenue that you need to opening up. I just don't think it's going to happen. I've been proved wrong before. I once said Nicolas Pepe would never join Arsenal. So let's see. I think this is a bit different, though. I think Barella's so important to that too.
Yeah, and do you know what it is? Generally speaking, the biggest and best Spanish players, Italian players, English players, German players tend to also not leave their homeland. They tend not to. There's always examples of where they have done that, but the large percentage generally stay. And I can't remember the last time that PSG got Verratti when he was young. I can't remember the last time a big club in England signed like one of the top stars in his pomp from Italy. Like an Italian. I just don't remember it. Every time Man United years back were linked to Bonucci and Chiellini, I'm like, it's as if it's just not happening. Like there will be examples and people will be able to name some, but then if you look at how many it is over a 20-year period, it proves the point. It's rocking horse shit. Do you know what I mean? It's few and far between. So if I was giving advice to Liverpool fans, same as you, I would say just forget the idea. Same as Chelsea going after Chiesa. I laughed when I saw it. I was like, yeah, it just absolutely, again, you would have to offer. Make an offer they can't refuse. It would have to be.
There is an offer they would say. I don't think that even exists for him. Do you know?
Maybe there isn't. Yeah, maybe 150 million in a horse's head. You know what I mean? It had to be something mad. And even then, they'd be like, "Listen, we're not that intimidated. It's going to be." Someone here says Zola 20 years ago. Well, maybe that's the point. Like, if Zola is the example, then again, that proves my point. It's there'll be exceptions rather than a rule on that. Arsenal Football Club, Dean. Arsenal, you know, doing some nice business, doing some nice. Tavares over the line. Lokonga's pretty much here. Ben White closing in nicely. I think we know the situation with them. In terms of their midfield pursuit, though, the big news last week from the AFC Bell that Maddison's camp are expecting this big offer to come in. There's still talks of the Neveses and Basumas. Awards. What's going on with Arsenal right now in terms of their more marquee signing this summer?
I think all those names that you just talked about, like Neves and Maddison, throw Locatelli in there as well, they're all in the same price bracket pretty much, and it's all the same money. So Arsenal aren't going to go. People are like, where are Arsenal getting all this money from to sign all these players? They're not. It's the same money. They're going to sign one of them. That's the situation that they're in, and because they are unsure who they can attract right now, they're going after 5-6 players at the same time, seeing how far they can get down the line, and then see if they end up with one or two of them, which they've got to make a decision over. I still don't think James Maddison will join Arsenal personally. From inclinations I've got around that deal, like Maddison it would take something extraordinary for that to actually happen. Locatelli similarly, I think there's more chance of him landing elsewhere, probably in Italy, than coming over and playing for Arsenal. Ruben Neves is obviously available, so that's an option that seems viable because he's actually likely to make a transfer this summer, and might be Man United coming for him to challenge them. So we'll have to see. But again, that's 35 million. You're looking in that same ballpark. So it's interesting. I mean, Arsenal, like we've said since pretty much day one on here, is they have a lot of money available, and they're going to make more money available by getting players out the door. And they have to do it because they want an overhaul of the squad. And, you know, beyond that, those midfielders, obviously they want a 10. They want that attacking, creative player. Still think Isco might come into the thinking there. I think that his situation at Real Madrid is at best unclear. And I think it will be clear, I think, by the end of this week. From what I'm told, Real Madrid are expecting Isco to know where he stands, and if there's any point in him hanging around for another season. Isco almost leaves every year, and he never actually does. At some point, he has to leave. He's not getting any better, unfortunately. And I love Isco. He's one of my favourite players of his type. And it'll be interesting to see, once he has a decision to make, where he decides to go. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't consider Arsenal. So it would be interesting. But obviously, it wouldn't be the only club in for a player like that. Then it's also worth considering, you know, Arsenal are really looking at a forward, and they really need to find a buyer for Lacazette, because otherwise I'm not sure it can happen. Again, it's one of their problems with giving people big contracts, is that when the time comes to move that player on, the player doesn't really have that appetite to move because he's on such a good deal. He's happy in London. And there's not the desire from any other club right now to go and give Lacazette those same terms. So finding Lacazette a new club is tricky. But in the meantime, they are looking at options for who could potentially come in. I think it's worth just considering that Arsenal have had interest in Calvert-Lewin for a little while now. We'll have to see whether they are able to pursue that. But, you know, a couple of people that I speak to that are well connected at Arsenal, his name always seems to crop up, and he's never like the headline that they start talking about in terms of targets, but his name always crops up. And I think that there's a lot of uncertainty around what happens with Calvert-Lewin this summer. Even Juventus had a little sniff around him at the end of the season just to see what his situation was. With the way things are changing around Everton, he needs to be assured about how he fits in, how the club are growing. So at a time when Arsenal are looking for hungry, young players with a lot to prove and with desire to get a club to where they want to be, Calvert-Lewin could become an option. At the same time, Arsenal are having to convince players like Smith Rowe that they need to stay for that very reason, that they are still trying to find players that are alike them to come in. Villa testing them with 2 bids for Smith Rowe just shows that they think Arsenal were on the rocks while they are on the rise, and I think that they're just trying to show that Arsenal don't have the status they once had. Also got to look at Arsenal's stance. Villa coming in with bids of 25 and 30 million pound for Smith Rowe, when they've spent in advance of 35 million on Emi Buendia. Arsenal aren't going to do that deal. Of course they're not. He's still got a couple of years left on his contract. So it's an interesting situation, but all over the place. Arsenal are having to do a lot of juggling right now. They're still, I think Joe Willock will leave. Bellerin might leave. It's a tricky one, that. Arsenal not been totally convinced yet over whether it can happen and whether he'll go to Inter or not. But there's so much going on at Arsenal. I think, to be honest, it's going to be one of the most exciting clubs in terms of transfer business.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that at all. They have, as you say, they've got to do a lot of work on that. They're pushing bids away. They're working on new deals. They're trying to sign new players, trying to sell people. It's lots and lots happening there. There was a comment here from one of our members, Sharek. It says, "Is the Locatelli bid real?"
I haven't been told from anyone that I speak to that this bid is a formal bid. As I say, I think it's that same money that they've been touting around to other people. So I'm not going to completely write off, because people have different contacts and I don't like to knock down other people's stories. But I believe that Arsenal were inquiring over him because he's in the exact bracket where they need to be shopping right now. He's a player whose status is exactly where they want to be. He's had a good summer. So I think they probably have just trying to check out where they are. I doubt they've actually put in £40 million and expected him to sign anytime soon.
Yeah, I think this, as you say, this kind of goes down to, I know Tancredi Palmari said that Arsenal would bid 40 million for him. I think he tweeted about that last night. Well, I know he did. I sent it to you just to gauge, thoughts and feelings. And it's, as you say, that could have just been an intermediary sends it in, says Arsenal would be interested. Would 40 million be enough? And then it's down to you whether you think that's a bid or if you think that's an inquiry.
And it also gets interpreted differently in different countries. Like in Italy, they might say, "Oh, a bid's come in for Locatelli," whereas in England, you wouldn't really consider that to be a bid necessarily, because we are very clear in what we consider the different things are, as I've seen you spelling out on your own Twitter page recently about how you're trying to differentiate between the different stages of a transfer. But yeah,
well, I called that out the other. Like, for me, it's a case of everyone has a different. Like, I say things and people go, "No, it doesn't mean that," and I'm like, "Well, based on what?" Well, that they'll quote a journalist. Go, "This journalist says it means something different." I'm like, "Mate, it's like the world class debate. You could ask 50 people and get 50 different answers." I'm not saying they've got to do this because this is boring, but there should just be like, if there was one size all that fits language, then it'd be easy. But then it wouldn't be fun. Like, for me, that's what makes it fun. But people get really bogged down on the detail. For me, my view would be, Arsenal are interested in Locatelli. That's it, and they're willing to spend 40 million on.
Exactly, I think that's where you should be right now with it. Exactly that. Yeah,
that feels more normal as far as I'm concerned. Let's go to some more of these member chats that have come through here. If you've got any questions for Dean, get them through. Some of these things are weird. A lot of them are talking to each other. There's no real questions. It's just a statement. It goes, the Liverpool fan last night got so triggered when he heard that Liverpool had been priced out of Youri Tielemans. Would you agree with that? I mean, you kind of touched on it earlier. Youri Tielemans is just going to be too expensive for Liverpool this summer. Would you think?
Yeah, they just touched base on it, and they haven't followed up their initial interest in Tielemans. He'll sign an extension with Leicester now, which isn't a bad thing. Leicester are quietly improving their squad. While we've all been focused on the Euros, they've signed Patson Daka for £23 million. They've signed Bubakari Samare for an initial 15, which will go up. They're on the verge of announcing Ryan Bertrand's joining. Leicester already had a good squad, and they're going to have an even better squad next year. So Tielemans, while he's delayed signing the contract at Leicester because he wanted to see what offers came in, he's perfectly happy to remain there.
Yeah, and do you know what's interesting is I was looking at the wages they pay actually, and he's on 120 grand a week they're paying now, which is
Well, it's the same as Brendan Rodgers. Where, people say kind of surprised that Brendan Rodgers, when other clubs come along like Tottenham and stuff, why doesn't he? He's one of the highest paid managers. Like Leicester reward people, and they are very good at that. They are very good at keeping people happy, and they also tend to, when people really want to go, they do let them go. So it's a good club to be at.
Yeah, I agree, and they pay good money. I mean, there's an argument to say that they might pay Youri Tielemans more than what Liverpool are willing to give him
from what we've seen recently.
Yeah, like it's, and these things matter. At the end of the day, I know that we've got this habit of calling football players mercenaries. My view is no, they're professionals, and their job is to earn as much money as they can for them and their families. If I could work for 15 years and my great grandchildren would never have financial worries, I'm doing it. Do you know what I mean? It's got to be done. Felix here says, what would you say is the likelihood of Haaland to Chelsea and Rice to Chelsea in terms of a percentage, Dean?
Can you imagine a summer where you signed Haaland and Rice? That's the dream. I mean, that's the aim. So in terms of a percentage, I mean, I think Rice, I'd go 60 at the moment, 60% chance they get Rice. I mean, Haaland, you can't give him any more than 50% because of Dortmund's stance is that they're not selling. And so far, Chelsea haven't put forward that cash. So I don't know how you interpret that into an overall percentage, but it's not more than 50% that they sign those two players. But there's definitely a willing to do it. Just none of us know yet whether it's even possible from the selling clubs. How far they'll drop on their asking, or where the players' heads are at. I think both players will do it. I do. We'll have to see. Until these things start happening, we don't know. Yeah,
I hear you on that. And I think, like we said earlier, it's waiting for these first official bids to come in for me. That's the key point from my side of things. It's a bit like, you got I know the Varane situation is very different because there's 1 year left on a contract, the player's pushing to leave. But as we said on the show many times, it just didn't feel real. United were treading kind of carefully. And now it appears actually we might just strike quickly because it really looks like he wants to join us. There's almost this element of, if Chelsea put in a bid, let's just say Declan Rice, of say 65 million, it's then the response of Declan Rice and his team that will then either encourage Chelsea to bid a little bit more or push a bit harder. Maybe transfer requests then come in. No one quite knows. And I think that there's definitely a percentage and chance. I agree with that one. Someone says to Terry, when are you going to do a season preview? Tired of transfer gossip already. Season previews start next week on the Football Terrace. We're going to be doing transfer review shows, which are more so looking at the impact these players have from a football standpoint, as opposed to just the business side. I love the business side, though. It's honestly, I miss being a salesperson. I've realized in the last few weeks, I miss being involved in complex sales. Let's do some more of these comments. Terry, lead striker is trending right now. I don't know why. That's trending. Sharek here says, any update on the Lingard situation, Dean?
There hasn't been really, to be honest. I think it's one that they're going to take the time over figuring out. I still don't think that Lingard is convinced that he's got any part to play at Man United. There's been no change in stance, no reason to believe that. I guess the only thing that's changed a little bit on United is the fact we've talked before about Martial potentially leaving. That Rashford injury, I do wonder how that changes things in the setup for the start of the season. And the fact he's going to be out for about 2 months at the start. So it might be either Martial or Lingard isn't allowed to go just because they offer similar-ish traits to the team. So that's worth considering. West Ham still want to sign Jesse Lingard. They still think they will, but it hasn't really gone very far yet.
There we go. I'm about to say with the Martial situation, actually, they were looking to move him on. I mean, the fact that Rashford could miss him in 2 months, that's probably good news for Anthony Martial in his camp about staying at United.
Yeah, exactly that. I still think if an actual offer came in, they would probably sell him, but there's no sign of someone paying big money for him. And so you think, well, what's the point of us sending him out on loan if we potentially are going to have a gap that only takes one more injury and suddenly you're struggling for numbers to back up your attack. So, Martial still doesn't have, a great future looking at United, but at least it gives him an opportunity to be involved in pre-season and try to play his way in at the start again. He's still a good player. It's just he lacks that confidence that he needs to become part of it all.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one indeed. There's no doubt about it. Dean, I appreciate you coming on as always. I'm just checking that we went through all the things that we wanted to touch on. We have. Viewers, thank you very much for tuning in and for putting us past 200,000 subs. We will be doing a stream to kind of celebrate that a little bit later. So make sure you stay tuned for updates from us. But until next time, everybody take care of yourselves. Goodbye. God bless. And we'll